Everyone likes to complain about meetings, but I don't think the problem is in spending time to meet with people, but how we approach meetings. And I actually think we should have more 2 hour meetings. Let me explain. And I'm not suggesting we do 2 hour meetings back to back every day of the week. That would be super exhausting and we would never get anything done. But I do think we could and should make time for at least one or two in depth 2 hour meetings each week. And probably the word meeting isn't even the best word to describe those type of meeting. It's more closer to the original meaning of the word meeting, which is to come together as people and discuss. And I'm also not suggesting we do these 2 hour meetings with 50 people over Zoom, where we know that only a few people will really be talking during the time and the rest will be probably washing dishes with their camera off. I'm thinking the limit is probably up to 3 people, maybe a couple more, but that's already pushing it. And probably Zoom isn't the best platform. You should look into using a more fun tool like Gather or Work Adventure. And unlike with the meetings we usually have, the point of these 2 hour meetings is not to quickly go through an agenda and have action points, but it's actually to build relationship and develop shared meaning and shared understanding, taking the time to go into all those little anecdotes and share our lived experiences with each other as humans. And my personal experience when you make time for those kind of get-togethers with people is that the first hour feels very unproductive and a bit all over the place. And, it has all these weird tangents, and I feel that is just the time it takes for human brains to actually warm up. But what usually happens is that if you give yourself time for these get-togethers and lean into the mess and chaos and sharing personal stories, I'm finding that within the second hour, something starts emerging. And you start seeing all these unexpected connections and making unexpected connections between your shared experiences and stories. And you usually arrive at something that's way more valuable that you would get in a regular meeting. Think about this. How many times have you heard, "We don't have time to discuss this now," in your work, especially in meetings? And it can be so frustrating because usually the things that are brought up and we don't have time for are really important concerns and perspectives that should be investigated. But because our modus operandi is to have these shorter 30-minute, 45-minute, 1 hour meetings, we never get the chance to come back to those important topics. And because companies see this meandering off-topic conversation as a waste of time and something that gets in the way of getting work done, what ends up happening is that companies end up spending a ton of money on yearly or even quarterly in-person offsites to compensate for this. So in the end, you have to have those conversations and spend quality time together, but by dismissing and saying we don't have time to get into this now, you're just offsetting that moment in time, and it actually ends up costing you more. So I keep wondering, wouldn't it be better if companies actually allowed people to have longer exploratory get-togethers once or twice per week? This way, we would nurture and develop human relationships and get to know each other and our ways of thinking in depth while we do our work. And maybe it does slow us down a bit in the short term, but in the long term, we actually get more comfortable knowing each other, knowing how we think, and we start developing a shorthand as we become more comfortable in collaborating with each other. And this is what I've been personally discovering as I collaborate with people on various projects. And the magic really happens and the best ideas emerge when we give ourselves time to relate to each other, to share those little stories, to first take 1 hour to warm up, and then in the second hour, often something really unexpected happens that ends up surprising us all. And it's almost like if you go beyond that 2 hour mark, you end up being tired, you start getting hungry, your body starts craving for rest, and there's also this wind down period that is actually a pleasant experience So I think our minds are kind of like muscles that need to warm up. And there's research, right, that brain waves synchronize as we work on something together. But I think, it really takes time to get fully in sync. And I think the reason why we have all those shorter meetings is, well, because you can fit more of them in a day, and it makes everyone feel like they've done something by having multiple meetings. And there's some research about attention spans and all of that. But what I'm finding is that when you have a really good quality conversation one to one, or maybe with two other people, you actually get more invested as time goes on. So the attention span isn't really a problem. Think about all the conversations you have with close friends. At first you start off, sharing trivial little updates, maybe joking around. It's very trivial, but if you spend enough time together, usually in the second hour, is where the magic happens, where you really start digging into those deep topics. Anyway, that's just my experience, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And I know not everyone has the opportunity to dedicate those sort of time to really engaging in deep conversations about your work and the issues you're noticing around in the world. But I really think companies should make time for that instead of spending exorbitant amounts of money on culture alignment and offsites and all of that things that essentially compensate for the fact that they are not allowing us to spend quality time together as humans.